Hello, good afternoon, good evening. I hope that this finds you well, whatever time of day it is with you. My name is Laura Jane, and it's very nice to have you here with me this afternoon. I hope that January is treating you well. We're going to have quite a busy hour, so I hope that you're ready to study hard. Very good. So, what we're going to be looking at today, as you have probably guessed from the title, is we're going to be looking at writing. We're going to be looking at something quite specific to do with the writing as well. So one moment, I'm just going to get my super PowerPoint up so you can have a look. Okay. So what we're going to be looking at, something which is quite a common problem, actually. We're going to be looking at how to move up. How to move up from a band 6 to a band 9. Yes, it's quite a bold ambition, but we can do it. It's not impossible. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that everybody is really familiar with the type of tasks that you'll be asked, that you may be asked to complete. Hello, Imran. Nice to have you here with me today. We're going to be looking at the type of task that you might be asked to complete. We're then going to be looking at a sample, quite a good band 6 answer as well. Going to be looking very carefully at what the examiners want. So we're going to be looking very carefully at what holds somebody to a band 6. And then we're going to look how to move upwards of that. Okay, so it's going to be good. After we've looked at the band 6 and we've gone through, hello Sabut. After we've looked at the band 6 and we've gone through quite carefully what the issues are, we're then going to look at a sample band 9 answer to the same question. And we're going to look to see what characterizes a band 9 IELTS essay. Okay, my theory is if they're offering band 9, if it's possible, it's possible. Okay, is it difficult to achieve? Anything that's it's worth achieving is difficult. It's not impossible. Think of it more as a challenge. Okay, so we're going to be looking at something which is typical. It's actually a real IELTS question from a past paper. We're going to be looking at this. Okay, so let's make this big actually, so you can see. Today, the high sales of popular consumer goods reflect the power of advertising and not the real needs of the society in which they are sold. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Okay, so let's just have a real careful look at this. So today, that's quite self-explanatory. The high sales of popular consumer goods reflect the power of advertising and not the real needs of the society in which they are sold. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Okay. So, the good news for you guys is that there is a limited amount of topics that you will be asked to write and speak about. This is because, and those of you that have been in my classes before, I say this all the time, The IELTS exam is taken globally. So it doesn't matter if you are in Nepal or if you are in Nicaragua, okay? You are all taking the same exam, exactly the same exam. So what this means is that the people that write the exams need to make sure that they are asking questions that everybody, doesn't matter what nationality they are or which country they're living in, that everybody can formulate a fair response to. And advertising and society, these are very general subjects. Now, excuse me, yes, I mean, this is a specific question. And we're going to look in some detail at the exact nature of this question as well. But the good news is, and we'll be looking at this in the next lessons to come, the good news is that there isn't an unlimited amount of topics they will ask you about. So advertising is certainly something that you should prepare and you should expect to be asked about, probably not in both parts of the exam, but either the speaking or the writing. So you need to make sure that you're prepared to produce language about this. Okay. I think it's quite, me personally, I think it's, hi Zakia, I think it's a good question to be asked. But what I will say is I think that it's quite a carefully written question. And if you're not careful, you could go in the wrong direction to what the examiners want you to be writing about. Okay, so it's a question that when you first look at it, it seems quite straightforward. But actually, you need to do some quite specific things, focus on some quite specific areas, and not focus on some other areas as well. And this is where problems sometimes emerge, because students write about what they want to write about. They don't write about specifically what they have been asked to write about. Okay, so I'm just going to show you very quickly now, and we will be referring to this throughout the hour, okay? We are going to be on Facebook for the full hour today. We're not moving the class around at all, okay? I just want to show you this, okay? Something that if you're not familiar with, you should be. It is publicly available, but it's something that I ask students to refer to, and it's something that examiners refer to as well. Okay, so let me show you this lovely document. Okay, I'm going to make it big. Here we go, Shazam. All right, so these are what we call the band descriptors. So the advantage that you guys have is that it's very strict and it's very clear what you are going to be marked on. Now, examiners, because so many people take the IELTS exam, they basically have to very strictly work when they're marking within this guide here. As you can see, this is the public version, so it's for teachers and it's for students. You know, it's not a secret, but there isn't some kind of mystery document that examiners themselves refer to when they're marking. It's the same thing. And basically, as you can see here, let me get my magic pen. There we go. You can see here, there you go, that makes everything clearer. Okay. These are the bands, 6, 7, 8, and 9. I'm going to erase that because that can be quite distracting. Okay. So for each of the bands, and as you know, they have 0.5s between them as well. It's very clear what you need to do. It's very clear what you should not be doing as well. So as we look through the two sample responses to the same question this afternoon, we will keep looking back and see what the student has done to get the band and what they need to do to move higher. And for the band 9 essay, we're going to be looking at how the examiners can explain why this can be a band 9, not an 8, not a 7, and not a 6. It's very, very clear what you need to do. So before we look at the band 6 essay, I just want to make it really clear the 4 different areas that your writing is marked on. So 25% is what is called your task response. Basically, have you done what the question asked you to do? Okay, so that's quite straightforward. We will look as well, because obviously there are different ways that students ask this well and not so well. But this is basically how you're doing what you've been asked to do, not what you want to do, what you think is a good idea to do. Have you followed the instructions, basically? So that's the first 25%. The second 25% is coherence and cohesion. Very, very important, this. It's very important because lots of students, and to be honest with you, lots of teachers don't really teach it this much. They sort of expect this 25% to magically happen. It doesn't magically happen. It is still 25% of your mark. And this is all to do with organization, sequencing, and how your ideas progress or not throughout the writing. Okay, so that's the first 50% dealt with. Have you answered the question, and how organized, sequenced, and clear is your response? Then we move on to the other 2, and I think this is not a massive surprise that you're marked on your lexical resource. This is another word for vocabulary, and your grammatical range and accuracy. No big surprises here. What is sometimes a bit of a surprise is that this is only 50% of your mark. So your grammar and your vocabulary, yes, it's important, but it's half of your mark. The other half is looking at how well you have given an expanded and detailed response and how successful your attempt to sequence and organize it is. Okay, so get used to this. This is really important because if the examiner's using it, you should be using it as well. Okay. All right. So thank you very much, Nina. Very nice to have you as well. I just think you need to think like an examiner because they're your audience. And I know if you've been with me before, and I say this a lot, when you're reading them and you're listening, a computer marks that. Right? The computer doesn't care, they just want to know if you've got the answer right or wrong. If you're speaking and you're writing, you need to appeal to the person that's reading or the person who's listening. You need to put yourself in their position. And really, there's not any excuse not to, because they make it very, very clear what you need to do. So, it's just about being intelligent, to be honest with you, and looking at the information that you've been given. Okay, while we're talking about being intelligent, see what I did there? Let's have a look at the question, and let's have a look at the first response to it as well. Okay, so here we go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to disappear again. Back. We're going to go. Here we are. All right, so what I want you to remember as well, okay, is that a band 6 is a good mark. Now, I don't know how it works in the countries that you're from, but we work in the UK generally. Like from when you're at primary school, you get marks out of 10. Okay, it's like you get 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And because 6 doesn't sound like it's a particularly high score, people think it's not, and it is. 6 is a good upper intermediate level of English. Okay, 7 is advanced. Okay, so we're going to have a look here at the response. But I just want to draw your attention first of all. See if I can make this a bit bigger for you. There you go. All right. Okay. First thing you need to do before you do anything, before you even write anything, before you think about your answer, actually, is you need to spend time in the exam analyzing the question. This is not time which is wasted. Arguably, this is the most important thing that you need to do in the exam, because if you don't understand the question, your task response is just not going to be good. And if your task response isn't going to be good, then that's going to alter the way that the examiner marks your coherence, cohesion, your vocabulary, and your grammar. So you need to spend some minutes, not like 20 minutes, obviously, but you need to spend some time before you plan analyzing the question here. Now, as I said before, you are at an advantage because there is a limited amount that the examiners can ask you to write about. So advertising is what we're looking at today, okay? What sometimes happens is that, I'm the same as you. In an exam, I'm not thinking the most clearly, and I just look at words and they jump out, and maybe we don't consider the whole question, and that's a big mistake. You can't do that, okay? You need to understand the full extent of what you've been asked to do. So what happens is students look at this and they go, oh, it's really stressful. And they see, right, these words normally jump out at them. Advertising, well, yeah, and that's an important word. Society, okay. And maybe popular. Because these are what we call high frequency words, okay? So these are the words that our brains recognize, to be honest with you. Yeah, these words are important, and you won't be able to answer the question correctly without using these. But there's other things as well that you need to be aware of here. This is not, you're not being asked just to focus on these three words. You need to break it down really carefully. And the way that I do this personally, and I do this with essay questions myself and with exam questions too, is I look at it not as a whole question, but I break it down into smaller parts, because our brains deal with smaller pieces of information more effectively than they do with big pieces of information. Okay, so in the exam you won't have highlighters, but we're learning, so let's do that. Well, the first word is today. I mean, that's quite straightforward. No stresses there. Today, okay. High sales of consumer goods. Okay, so this is the first big area of focus. The high sales of popular consumer goods. Now, I highlighted in a moment ago advertising in red before consumer goods, because advertising is a more high frequency word. And when you're reading, you're much more likely to focus on this word because you'll have seen it and used it a lot more than consumer goods. But consumer goods are important. Okay, so the high sales of popular consumer goods. Okay, and then we're moving. We've got a verb here. How exciting! Reflect the power of advertising. So the high sales of popular consumer goods, that is, if you like, that's the subject, isn't it? Reflect the power of advertising. I'm not going to go into a linguistics breakdown, but this is a verb phrase here. Reflect the power of advertising. High sales of popular consumer goods. Reflect the power of advertising. Now, we always tell you to look out for linking words because they're important. So if you're being super clever, you think and, right? Now, you might think, okay, and is a linking word where we add information, and you are not wrong. But have a look. We've got a negative. So actually, it's a bit of a trick. So and, yes, it's an additive linking word, but afterwards we have got a not. So it's going to be opposing what has come before. Be careful. These examiners are tricky, aren't they? And not the real needs of society in which they're sold. It's a lot of information here, and I'll get to the actual question part underneath in a second. You have a lot to think about here. This is why planning is so important. This is why you need to sit and think, what does this mean? What can I write about, and how can I write it? So what you need to do in the IELTS introduction itself, and it's something we will look at later, is you need to make sure that the examiner knows that you've understood the question, but also that you can put it into your own words. And that's what I suggest that you do straight away. It's almost like translating. Don't translate into your own language, but translate from English into English. What does this mean? How can you put it in your own words? So basically, it's saying we're shopping a lot. We are buying a lot. And this large amount of buying is because of adverts. And it's not really anything to do with what we need. Okay, that's how I would describe it. If I was thinking, what does this mean? Say we're buying loads because we're having an absolute huge amount of advertising. We don't need the stuff we're buying. We're just buying it because we're told that we need it to be happy and successful people. Okay, obviously I can do that quite quickly, but it will take more time for you to do that in the exam. Now, this is really important as well. To what extent do you agree or disagree? This is like the function part of the question, isn't it? So this is what the statement is that you're going to need to write about, to discuss. But you need to make sure what you're being asked to do with this statement. So to what extent do you agree or disagree? Now, there are different types of IELTS essays, aren't there? You know that as well as I do. You could be asked about advantages, disadvantages, a discussion. You could be asked about a cause and a solution, but you're not being asked that. They say, agree, disagree. Quite clear. All right, now I'm going to read this to you. I'm going to try and not correct any of the errors because at band 6, and this is an essay to show you what is a good effort, but this is by no means perfect. Okay, it is a fair upper intermediate level 6 essay. So nowadays people go shopping too much and buy too much of the things. I think this is not a good idea. The high sales of consumer goods reflect the power of advertising. This is true, yes. There are many ways of advertising, however, on YouTube and on websites. The advertisements are very beautiful and have famous actors, and they are very expensive to make. We like watching these advertisements a lot. There are many of these on TV, and sometimes get angry, moreover, as they are too many, and we cannot watch TV shows without there being many of the advertisements play all of the time. It is too much, I think. There are advantages. Advertising does have the power. They try and to sell many beautiful things to us. They are being expensive. However, do we need these things in our lives? In recent years, the way that people see advertisements is different. We see them on the websites and the internet. We see them a lot. We need to not spend so much money on the beautiful things. We do not have the money for everything we see. I would like a new iPhone, but I can't, as I don't have the money for the iPhone, however. My sister likes to be watching television, and she has favorite actors. They are famous, and she wants to be on television and get rich. The disadvantage is we do not earn enough money. People have to get credit cards to buy many things, and they are expensive. We want the beautiful things. I would like to have more money, but money does not make you happy, maybe, I think. Okay, all right. So I tried not to correct myself there too much, and I'm sure that as you were listening, you probably thought, what's wrong with Laura? Does she know that this is not good English? Yes, I very much know that what I was reading there in some places was not good English. Don't worry. But as I said, this is a working document. So it does have mistakes because we're going to look at the mistakes and we're going to fix them. So don't worry. My magic English powers have not escaped me. So we will look back at this in 1 second. I'm just going to move back because I want us to refresh our memory of these. Okay. 1 second. Okay. Let's have a look here. Right. So, whoa, what is an IELTS examiner going to look for in a band 6? Okay. So, I'm going to get some highlighters going here. I like colors. So, let's have a look. Now, as I said before, 6 is good, you know. Basically, all the parts of the tasks have been covered, not equally, but they're okay. The position that the opinion is clear, but conclusions aren't very clear. And some things are underdeveloped, so some things are not expanded upon. Okay, so that is the question being answered, or not particularly effectively. Right, now coherence and cohesion. Let's see what you get here. So arranges the information well, and there's a clear progression. Uses cohesive devices, we might call them linking words, amongst others, and cohesion, but sometimes they aren't correct and they don't really fit in with the rest of the writing. And they use paragraphing, but it's not always logical. So room for improvement there. Now let's have a look at the vocabulary. Again, your vocabulary has to be good to get a 6. It means that the range of vocabulary is fine to provide a good answer. Some less common vocabulary, so things that you might not have seen too much. There's some mistakes with spelling and word forms, but impede means prevent. Okay, so they don't have a massively negative impact on the level of communication. And here, grammar. Everyone's obsessed with grammar. Grammar is important, but it's 25% of your mark, 75% of other things. So simple and complex sentence forms. So we'll look at those together in a second. So it means that some of the sentences are very sophisticated, and some of them are quite straightforward. Even if you're writing a level 9, some of your sentences will be simple because they have to be simple. And you see as well that, there's some mistakes with the grammar and with punctuation, but it doesn't really affect the communication of what they're trying to say. So we're going to look at this quite systematically. The first thing I'm going to look at is over here in green, the task response. Okay, so this is basically, has the student answered all parts of the question? Is the position clear? And have they repeated themselves? And is it unclear in some ways too? Okay, so these are the ones in green. So let's have a look back at our level 6 answer here. Going back in. Here we go. And I will remember to use my green highlighter. Okay, here we go. So, keywords here. Let's go big. Keywords here. Have they answered all the parts of the question? And have they expanded? Now, by expanded, what the examiners mean is, have you used examples? And have you proved why you have particular opinions? Okay, so I don't think that the person that's responded here has totally understood the question. Okay. They have focused a lot on advertising and shopping. Okay, so let's just have a look here. There are many ways of advertising, however, on YouTube and websites. It goes on. The advertisements are very beautiful and have famous actors, and they are very expensive to make. This is what happens so much, is that a student focuses on a word in the question and not the whole question. They choose to focus on not even a part of the question. This is just a word. So, yeah. And it goes on. We like watching these advertisements a lot. There are many of these on TV, and we sometimes get angry. Moreover, as there are too many, you can't watch TV shows without there being too many of the advertisements play all of the time. It's too much, I think. Are they talking about advertising? Yes. Are they talking about advertising in the context of this particular question? No. This is, how many words is this here? Let's have a look. That's 77 words. That's 77 words of an answer, which isn't answering anything. This is going to annoy an examiner. Okay. Examiners mark hundreds of these essays. Okay. And on the exam day, they're going to mark people responding to exactly the same question. They're going to read this and they're going to think, this is meant to be the introduction, and the person is just writing a load of words about advertising, which is not connected to the question. Doesn't look good. So start with bad impression. Okay. Then it continues. Advertising has the power. They had tried to sell beautiful things to us. They are being expensive. However, do we need these things in our lives? Now, here, I'm going to change this to green because this is kind of connected to the question, isn't it? They are being expensive. However, do we need these things in our lives? Well, okay, there's obviously some language issues here, but this is connecting to the question because we're being asked, why are we buying all this stuff? Don't use stuff in an essay. We're buying all of these items that we don't need. We need not spend so much money on the beautiful things. Again, it's quite good. We don't have the money for everything we see. I would like a new iPhone, but I can't as I don't have the money. Again, we are not answering the question. We are just talking about shopping. It's not what we've been asked to do. And then there's something really random here, but my sister likes to watch TV and has favorite actors. They're famous. She wants, yeah. This is nothing to do with anything. Okay. Then though, it kind of turns about a bit, doesn't it? The disadvantage is we don't earn enough money. Well, that's kind of connected. This is more a reflection of the question than the other parts which are highlighted in green here. People want to have credit cards and get many things. They're expensive. not strictly connected to the question. I would like to have more money. Again, not massively connected to the question. Ooh. But money does not make you happy, I think. Now, we will talk about the structure of this in a moment when we look at the coherence and the cohesion, okay? Because conclusions, the end of an essay does have a very important function, and it's not being used brilliantly here. So the main points of the essay we'll come to in a second. The irrelevant points, the points that we need to get rid of, frankly, are how much advertising you see. Now, I know it sounds slightly strict of me, or harsh if you like, if I'm talking about this, because the question does ask about the power of advertising. It would be better if this person had actually connected it to the question a bit more. You don't need to use nearly 80 words talking about advertising in general, okay? So it would have been better if they've then gone on to expand and build on that and say how we are being convinced to buy things we don't need. You must make sure it relates to the question. Another irrelevant point is about personal finance. This doesn't make any sense. I want an iPhone, I don't have any money. Not really to do with this, but it could have been. It could have been a good example. They could have said, I'd like a new iPhone, I have seen it, but is it going to make me happy? And then you could have expanded it, and they could have included more information to reflect the question. They have, though, done some quite relevant writings about money not making you happy. That's good. That's going to make an examiner think that they know what they're talking about a bit. In the amount of advertising, I know it seems strange because I'm putting this as a main point and an irrelevant point. The amount of advertising is relevant, but the way that it's been written about here with no connection to the question is not. So the main point really is, has the question been answered? Well, you're intelligent. You can work that out for yourself. I personally, for me, I think it has been answered enough to get a level 6, possibly. Obviously, the grades are spread across the 4 components. For me personally, I would give this a 5 for the task response, because it's very loosely connected to the question, but it doesn't answer the question as well. Now, something very important as well is, to what extent do you agree or disagree? And what they've done here is they haven't mentioned that really. They've said there are advantages and the disadvantage. So in the most obvious way, no, they haven't answered the question. They've written about the topic the question is about, but they haven't even said if they agree or disagree. So you need to be really, really careful about what you do with the points that you make. They must always reflect back. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to look at is, one second, I'm just going to move back, is the coherence and the cohesion. How is this organized? Basic, very, very basically, and examiners look for more than this. Is there a start, a middle, and an end? And there is. We have an introduction. We have the main points, but the main point as well, this part here, is a conclusion, but it's not really a conclusion because it's adding new information. Don't do this, okay? In the UK, a conclusion is a reflection back at the points that you have made in the middle 2 paragraphs here. It looks like, well, first of all, it looks like you don't know how to write an essay correctly. And secondly, and this is more often the case actually, it looks like you haven't planned it very well. It looks like you have suddenly thought at the end, oh, money doesn't make you happy. And that's, it's a really valid point, but don't put it at the end because there's no room here to you explain. There's no room for you to give examples. It just looks like you've just suddenly thought, oh, I've forgotten it, so I'll put it in anyway. It doesn't look good. It's a good point. It's in the wrong place. And it hasn't been treated correctly because it hasn't been expanded upon. Now, the introduction here. Now, we've looked at this before, haven't we? All of this stuff in green, it's not really relevant. And it's not introducing what you're writing about. It's simply writing about it. Now, introductions are something that I feel very strongly about for a lot of different reasons. First of all, it's the first impression that an examiner has of you. And it puts them in quite a fixed mindset about how they're going to mark the rest of your work. It's not fair, but even if you write a completely brilliant rest of your essay, if your introduction is weak, when the examiner gets to the end of the conclusion, even, they're still going to be thinking, yeah, it's good, but their introduction was not very good. Introductions are very, very important. First of all, because it is a first impression. And you can't ever make a first impression again. So it also is your chance to show you've understood the question. This is just such a vague statement. This one here. Nowadays, people go shopping too much and buy too much of the things. I think this is not a good idea. Well, okay, it's not really answering the question. Understood the question. You need to make it very, very on the main points. And what we call the micro points as well. So what the micro points are those words which don't immediately jump out at you, but they're the ones that make the question whole. You don't just write about shopping, you don't just write about advertising, you write about the power, and you write about how we're buying these things, but society doesn't need them. Okay? And also an introduction should outline what you are going to write about. The reason we do this is going back to coherence and cohesion, because examiners need to see in the main part of the essay that you have continued and you've actually done what you said you were going to do in the introduction. Okay? Because they need to see if in the introduction you introduce these ideas, if you write about them, and if you conclude on them. If you don't write in the introduction what you're going to do, it's pretty much impossible to mark whether you've done that or not, because there's nothing there to say you have or you haven't. Okay? So it's really, really important. The paragraphs in themselves are the right length. We looked before about the fact that there isn't a conclusion. They're a bit muddled. They're a bit disorganized. And that's why this would be a level 6. It jumps around a lot. Let's have a look at this paragraph here. Advertising has power. People see them in different ways. We don't have money. My sister, there's about 4 or 5 different ideas in one paragraph, and that's not appropriate. Okay, you need to have one main idea in each paragraph, and that is why the mark is not above a 6 for the way that it has been laid out. Now, the grammar and vocabulary, I mean, we can see here there are mistakes. The reason that it is a 6 is because, yes, there are mistakes, but what is written still makes sense. It's not perfect at all in any way, but we can still understand what the student is saying here. I mean, there's lots of mistakes here. You know, this is not a good idea. Moreover is a good use of language. There are too many. It's too much. Has the power. I'm just going to do a couple more with you as well. They tried some beautiful things in our lives. Yeah. Likes to be watching TV. So you can see there are mistakes here. Yeah. There's more than that, but I'm just going to show you these ones here. There are mistakes, but they are inaccurate, which means that there's quite a lot of mistakes, which means that it wouldn't be a 7 or an 8 or a 9, but it's not so terrible that you wouldn't get a 6 for it. Another thing that's holding this back and meaning that it's stuck on a 6 is the repetition. I mean, wow, look at this. Advertisements are beautiful. Beautiful things to us. Word advertisements is used huge amounts here. It's too much. Advertisements, advertising. What you can do, and what we'll see in the example of a level 9, is we can use words like it or them. Okay, so repetition. Here you have 250 words in a part 2, but repetition is just not acceptable. Okay, so yeah, okay, with the word advertising and consumer, you can use it maybe once or twice, but don't waste lots and lots of your time and lots of your word count just saying the same thing. So overall, this is not terrible, but it could be a lot better. And we're going to look now at an example of what could be a level 9. Let's just remind ourselves of what the examiners are looking for in a level 9. So just one moment. I'm just going to switch here. Yes, Zitan, you can use your views, and how we write about those views is very important as well. So we will get to that in 1 second. Okay, just one moment. I just want to, I'm just going to share again a level 9 grading system, which is very good. All right. Is a level 9 impossible? Not impossible. I'm showing you this because I think this is what you should be aiming for. No point doing something unless you're aiming to be the best. So let's just have a look here. So fully addresses, I did it in green. So has basically, to get a level 9, you need to do this. Answers everything, develops your position. Lots of supported ideas. Fantastic. Lovely. Skillfully manages paragraphing. Uses, these are good adjectives as well, wide range of vocabulary, which is natural and sophisticated. Still allowed to make some mistakes, but very, very few, and nothing that's going to confuse anybody. And the grammar, wide range, full flexibility. The rare minor errors only occur as what we call slips. Okay, so let's have a look at a level 9. Now, remember as well that this is, this is a perfect example. Pretty much perfect. So it's used for training purposes. don't be despondent, basically, is what I'm saying. If your writing is not looking like this, then it's by no means a problem. This is just a perfect, pretty much perfect example here. Okay. Okay. All right. It's a commonly held belief that advertising has such an impactful influence on consumers that we may crave the purchasing of the product without requiring it, or even, on occasion, understanding exactly what it is. This essay examines how and if we have been conditioned to buy on impulse without considering our actions. Firstly, it will examine how we have been led to be in this trance-like state, and secondly, if this is reflective of our real wants. It may be overly simplistic to attach blame to celebrity culture for this supposed predicament, but it may not be an over-exaggeration. Sports stars, social media influencers, actors and actresses are all paid exorbitant amounts to entice us to buy goods at their recommending. It clearly has effect. Collectively, we unthinkingly aspire not just the product, but elements of their starry lifestyle. We believe that by buying an item they have endorsed, they are endorsing us. There is a further aspect to be considered. Who is actually guiding both the advertising and those who are being advertised to? Those who make marketing decisions. They assert the real influence. We are a consumer-driven society, but we can only purchase what exists. The blame cannot just be placed with celebrities. Corporations are the ones who dream up the fanciful and impractical, not to mention expensive, objects that we desire. This leads to the issue of what we, as a society, really require to thrive. In the light of the current pandemic, it would appear it is not expensive objects that make our existence meaningful. It is human connection and interaction with those we care about and establishing a sense of purpose. Looking after one another and building a sense of community in person or remotely. To conclude, marketing companies would benefit from being mindful that the old adage is true. The best things in life are those that cannot be bought. Rather than focus on what we may not be able to have, they could focus on promoting what we do. Arguably, we as a society should too. Okay. Now, it is a full answer. And somebody in the chat said, should we give opinions? Yes, you should. Because if we think about the whole question, it is whether you agree or disagree. Okay. So I'm just going to go through this in sequence. The introduction is good because, first of all, we have responded here exactly to what we have been asked to do. Advertising is mentioned. Yes. Brilliant. Consumers. Yes. We have put the question, the statement which forms the question, in our own words. We then tell the examiner what we believe and what the essay is going to be about. And then we give more detail. We outline how we are going to argue this case. Very simple. You should do this too. It's using firstly and secondly. Okay? Not all the language has to be really, really complex, you know. The ideas have to be complex, but the way we articulate it isn't. So this paragraph Firstly, it will examine how we've been led to this. It does follow up on that. It uses examples. It talks about the people who influence us to buy the things we don't need. So an examiner is going to think, okay, they put firstly here. Do they write about this at first? Yes. There is very little repetition throughout the whole of the essay. Some points, obviously, you need to use the words that are the same, but there's a very broad range of language. There's lots of adjectives. There's lots of collocations. Now you're going to say to me, how do I learn these language points? Reading is the best thing for you to do for this, okay? The more you read about subjects that you are interested and you're not interested in, make notes of language you've not seen before that you think is useful. It's going to expand your language base. Now, this is a good linking expression here. Okay, there is a further aspect to be considered. Look at the length of the sentences here. Some of them are long, some of them are short. Okay. So far we're doing well because we have a very clear introduction. The bulk, the main body of the essay is doing exactly what has been said is going to be done in the introduction. We've used some really interesting examples here. Now this, unfortunately, is something which is relevant, going to be relevant for a bit longer, unfortunately. Talking about things in context makes you appear more intelligent, more aware of what's going on, okay? So using examples are great, using relevant examples like we've done here to build upon and to expand upon the main ideas. The examples have been quite carefully chosen. And they are, you see, each paragraph has one main point. Celebrities in this paragraph here. People who tell us what we need here. And things that we need which we cannot buy, what society really wants and needs, here. The ideas have been organized very well and it makes it easy to read. Also, we've stopped ourselves from repeating all the time by using words like they, okay? And this is called referencing. So to stop repeating the same thing, we've used words like they, this, and them. Now, you can use this to conclude. Now, as I said before, a conclusion is to draw together the points that you have mentioned earlier in the essay. And what we do when we're marking, actually, we read in a kind of a strange way. We read the introduction and then we read the conclusion. We do read the middle part as well. But what we do is we do that to try and make sure that the whole of the essay is like a circle, that it makes sense, basically. It's like a circular essay. So the conclusion has to match, not with the exact same words, but we have to see if it is reflecting the introduction. Okay. Also, the reason that this conclusion is very good is because it makes a recommendation. So whilst you can't add anything new in terms of subject or topic, a recommendation is a really good thing to include when you are writing a conclusion, because it leaves the person thinking that you've assessed and analyzed everything in the essay, and then you say what you think should happen next. It's a good thing to do, okay? Make a recommendation about something in the future. Okay, so main points to think about. The introduction, The yellow block re-explains, it's called paraphrasing, in their own words, what the question is about. We say what we are going to write about, and then we go into more detail and we outline how we're going to justify this belief in green. The paragraphs are very well organized. They stick to one point in each paragraph, and they use intelligent and clear examples that are of the moment, and it's all very smooth. We give our opinions, but we also give the opinions of others as well. The conclusion links back to the main body of the paragraphs here, doesn't repeat any of the language, but it builds on the ideas that have been written. And there's a recommendation at the end as well. Okay, good stuff. So, thank you for your time. It's been very nice to have you with me. There's no reason at all you shouldn't be going to get those band 9s. Remember, be organized, be clear, plan. Most importantly, understand that question, and then you'll be away. Have a lovely evening. See you the next time. Bye-bye.